Hi.
All right, I think we're live. So if you're joining us on YouTube, hello, and if you're joining us on Instagram, hello as well. Great. So before we kind of get into it, if you have any questions along the way, feel free to just leave a message in the comments and we'll try to address your questions that you do have. Great, we have people joining on Instagram. Cool. And on YouTube, hello, hi Terrence. So right now, well, we can introduce ourselves first. So I'm Christina. I am a international teacher recruiter with EF, and I am based in London right now.
Yeah, I'm Matt. I am also an international teacher recruiter and obviously also based in London right now.
Yeah, so with EF, we have quite an international company. So we have a recruitment team in the UK, the US, and in China. So like we said, we both work from the UK team based in London. Hello, hi Maya. And hello everyone else if you're joining. So today's topic, we're doing a live Q&A today, basically about skills that you can obtain from teaching English abroad. So Matt and I both taught English abroad, so we're quite knowledgeable about that. So if you have any questions, like I said, just leave them in the comments.
Yeah, it's really something for us that we really just wanted, if there's anybody out there who hasn't worked abroad before, you know, is considering their options. It's something that both of us couldn't recommend higher and just wanted to share a little bit of our experience, our perspective on things. So yeah.
Yeah. And then one other thing that's kind of unique about the two of us is that although we recruit for teachers to go teach with EF in China, neither of us actually taught in China before. We both taught abroad in other countries. So while we're quite knowledgeable about China now that we work for EF, we also have a bit of a different perspective as well. So yeah, we can offer that perspective or answer any questions about teaching abroad in general. Great. So yeah, we have a few questions that people had asked initially. So I guess we can start with those. And then if you have any, just feel free, like I said, to leave them in the comments.
Should we start by going through our backgrounds and our journeys with teaching abroad and everything?
Yeah.
So, Christina, how did you begin?
So I started out university with teaching. So my background was in education. So I went to school to be a secondary English teacher. So I'm from the US originally. So I studied English secondary education. So basically that's middle school and high school English. So then once I graduated from university, I was kind of looking at my options, and that's when I decided to teach abroad. So at that point in time, there just weren't many jobs in the US when I graduated. It was a time where it was just hard to get a job. So yeah, I just looked internationally, and that's why, or how I ended up teaching English abroad. And so for myself personally, I taught English in Taiwan. So I initially went for 1 year, like most people do, just go for a year, just like a year break and a year to travel and all of that. But I really loved it, so I ended up staying a total of 4 years.
Yeah, and in my case, I graduated back in 2012. Had always had this idea that I wanted to go abroad, but had no idea where to go, what to do, and sort of fell into teaching. I found myself tutoring someone who was studying for a master's, whose first language wasn't English. Loved it, and pretty much decided, you know what, I'm going to move to France. Much like Christina said, you know, everyone seems to have this, my plan is to go for a year. Everyone loves it so much, they end up staying for a lot longer than that. So I stayed in France for a while, Then moved on to Spain for 5 years. Was teaching in not with EF, but in a similar type of language training center. Held a couple of different roles there, which was great fun. But then decided I wanted something a bit different. Joined EF as a teacher recruiter. Had some time in Shanghai, and am now in slightly less exotic, but back in the UK. Okay. We had a question on YouTube from Terrence, who said, "How was the adjustment phase for either of you?"
Yeah.
So I'm assuming to like maybe the first time moving abroad.
Yeah, that's a great question. Because for myself, and this was a question we got as well previously, when I first moved abroad to Asia, it was my first time, really my first time traveling like abroad ever. So I didn't have previous experience like really anywhere. I think Canada was the farthest that I went at that point. So I was quite nervous going into it. But yeah, like as soon as I got there, everything was just so new and exciting and nerve-wracking, but exciting, those first few months, that I think you kind of just have to adjust quite quickly. And the school that I was at, and I also like with EF, everyone is there to support you all along the way. So whether it's the visa process, actually getting to China, or in my case, Taiwan, yeah, for little things, they picked me up at the airport. That was a help. So all of those little things really helped me to adjust. But I'd say it probably took me a few months to really feel fully like at home in my new country. But yeah, after that, I really just enjoyed it. It was an easy place to live.
Yeah. I'd say for myself, much like Christina, lived and worked in a couple of different countries, and that adjustment phase happened for all 3 of the countries. Like for example, living in France was really like my first time living and working abroad, and getting used to a new life, a new language, completely new job. I'm from a business studies background from my degree. It's a bit of a change. And then when I went to Spain, there was a different adjustment period to having a job that, was as a classroom teacher, a bit more responsibility. It was all on me there. So there was more of a professional adjustment phase. And the same would be if it's your first time going, thinking of going to China, going with EF, there would be that period of time where you have a lot going on. You have a new life sort of personally. You also have this new job, which, requires the training. It requires a lot of your energy at first, to be completely frank with everyone.
But a lot of new friends too. Like
true.
Friend overload.
yeah, much like that. And it's definitely this kind of support network that you would lean on at these times. Working with a company that has like a really strong structure is really important. Mm-hmm. A company that has the people in place who you can ask those questions. Am I doing this right in the classroom? It's only my second month of teaching. What can I improve on? Those people would be there, and also outside of personal life, like you said, mm-hmm. a bunch of new friends. That's essentially what it is. So it's definitely more of an adjustment period than there would be, say, moving to a job that's just down the road from home. It's a bit more than that, but there's support there. There's definitely a lot of support.
So I have a question for you.
Yep.
When you moved to France, do you speak French?
Yes.
Do you speak Spanish?
Yes.
And did that help in those two countries?
when I moved, I didn't.
Okay.
I spoke some French because I'd done a French course, mm-hmm. And very bad Spanish when I moved to Spain. So actually, much like a lot of the people who would be looking to move to China, not everybody studies Mandarin in their high school classes, right? So yeah, there was that kind of getting used to a bit of a language barrier, at least a little bit of the language, so I could In France, order my coffee and baguette. In Spain, café con leche, and everything like that. But you know, these roles abroad, I think, are more so than the language. They're for people who are quite open-minded.
Yeah,
I would say that's the big thing. You will pick up the language going abroad. That's a natural thing.
right.
So.
Yeah. For myself, so in Taiwan they speak Mandarin is the language. So I did not speak any Mandarin when I arrived. Like, not even a bit. Like, so very similar to China as well. Like, you really can easily get by without speaking the local language. That's why I was wondering if like European countries were similar. But it seems like, at least for a lot of Asian countries, specifically China, Taiwan, I found it completely easy to live my daily life without speaking any Mandarin. And yeah, then once I was there, I did take lessons, and then you do pick it up, like how to order coffee, or same as you, ordering coffee. Food is like basically what you learn.
Wherever you go, even if you're not fluent in the language, you've got to know how to order your coffee or whatever your hot drink of choice is in the morning. That's the key thing. But professionally, this is a sort of teaching English as a foreign language world is one where you don't necessarily need to use Mandarin or whatever the language is at work. You know, you are an English teacher. You teach 100% in English in the classroom. However, to anybody, that's kind of a personal opinion of mine, is you should definitely take some Mandarin classes.
Yeah,
you know,
I agree.
Get to grips and at least get those basics so you can order breakfast or order lunch and order dinner.
Right.
That's the key.
Yeah, exactly. Great. If you're just joining us, hello. We have two screens, so that's why we're kind of looking between up and down. All right, so we have a few questions. Let's see. Stephen is saying just that you're having issues with the website applying. I'll not accept your birth date.
Okay. We're not IT tech support, but what you could try is just try doing it with another browser.
Yeah.
And that might be a good move to do.
Yeah, you can try that. Also, this is a private chat here for people that have signed up on YouTube. So if you did want to just leave your email address, we could, if that's okay with you, Stephen, then we could just get in touch with you directly. Okay. Great.
Oh, and we've just heard from one of our colleagues that tech issue has been noticed and fixed.
Oh, perfect. Okay. Sounds good. Should I do this one?
Yeah.
So Monique just asked, what is best to bring with you, cash or money on a bank card?
Yeah. Well, you definitely have to be prepared. With EF, we do actually help set our teachers up with a Chinese bank account shortly after they arrive in China. However, you know, it's definitely recommended to bring some cash and have some money available on a bank card. Mm-hmm. So what would you usually advise your teachers going to China?
Yeah, usually the same thing, a bit of both. So I advise to bring some cash. You don't have to bring too much cash really, because you don't want to be carrying that much cash with you, like loads of it. But I usually recommend to take a bit of cash to bring with you, but then have money available in your bank. There's ATM machines and everything as usual. In China, just of course let your bank know that you're moving abroad so that your card doesn't get turned off. But you can really access cash quite quickly if you need it in China. So I'd say have most of it available on a card, but then bring a bit of physical cash with you. Yeah,
I'd say especially because if you bring too much physical cash, you're going to have trouble spending it. Because China's such a cashless society. So.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, you don't really use cash for much. So So yeah, good question, Mom.
And I think there's a follow-up from Monique that she's looking at getting a post office travel card, something like that. If you can be assured that you'd be able to withdraw money when you're out in China. And the same thing I would recommend to anyone speaking to their bank. That's just advise them and make sure that it's possible to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Great. So maybe let's get into maybe one of these questions here. Let's see. Sorry, there's a lot to choose from. Maybe number 6. So someone asked, what is the most important document or certifications for working abroad? Good question. Well, specifically for teaching abroad and specifically for China, you don't really need too much. It's quite easy to obtain the working visa. Mostly you just need a bachelor's degree, and you need like your physical copy of your bachelor's degree. You need your passport, and you need a background check. So depending on what country you're coming from, you do have to get a background check that your recruiter can tell you which one to get. So you do have to have a clear background check. Am I missing anything?
Obviously, visa documents and things after that. But
right. Yeah. The other thing you need to teach in China is a Tefl certificate. So that's the teaching English as a foreign language certificate. But that's simple and easy to get as well. So your recruiter could tell you more about that.
Yeah.
And you don't need that before applying. You can get that after you accept a position.
Yeah, that's something that actually English First offers to sponsor anybody who hasn't completed the Tefl course. We'd offer to sponsor to do a 120-hour online course. So yeah, not necessary to have everything completely in line when you go for the interview, when you decide you want to make the move. Particularly as with the visa process, there is time factored in for you to collect documents and make sure you're completely eligible for the role.
Yeah, there's definitely enough time. Usually the visa process takes about
couple of months
4 to 6 months.
Yeah, I was going to say in normal times. Well, as we're all very aware, things might take a bit longer at the moment. In normal times, it would be a couple of months to go through the visa process. But as you were saying, a very rough ballpark figure would be around 4 to 6 months to get through, what is a slightly extended process at the moment.
Yes. Great. Okay, a lot of questions coming through now. I guess we could talk about the apartment hunting question. So someone asked, how did you find apartment hunting? As I've been looking online at a lot of places, it's the rent and agency fees that confuse me. Okay, that's a great question. What I would say is if you are moving to China with EF, what we really recommend is don't waste any time looking into finding a place before you actually get there. So Monique, if you're looking just to see what's available, that's fine. But definitely don't commit to anything until you're there in person, because you want to see an apartment. You want to see it in person. You don't want to just see photos, because sometimes it's not exactly what it looks like online.
Yeah.
So yeah, my first tip for that would be don't worry so much about housing until you actually get there.
Yeah, I mean, I've spoken to a lot of teachers who've done a bit of research before going out to China and have said, a rough figure of how much they've found a place for, and it just makes more sense to do it when you're over there. You more than likely can get a better deal. Mm-hmm. You can, like you said, see it with your own eyes, which is really important. In any case, there's a fair bit of support when you get over to China. So we've actually got, as part of your onboarding process with EF, there is a session that we run on finding accommodation. We've got contact details of people who can help you find a place in the city that you're in, and also a bit of extra financial support on that side as well.
Yeah, definitely. I think housing is probably the one thing most people are most nervous about, which makes sense. Most nervous about, but also most exciting. One of the most exciting parts is finding your new apartment, especially in a country like China where you can actually like afford a nice apartment as compared to London.
Yeah, bit pricey.
Right. So yeah, it's definitely a valid concern, but EF does help you through the whole process. So there will never be a point where you're stuck without housing. So yeah, whichever city you go to, EF will help you find accommodation.
Yeah, in fact, there's some teachers I'm working with are currently in 2 different Chinese cities, but are in a hotel that EF has paid for a couple of weeks while they're looking for accommodation. So yeah, that takes some of the pressure of finding a place on day one out of there.
Yeah, definitely. EF pays for your hotel the first few weeks, so you have time to sort of settle in a bit.
Absolutely. Okay.
Cool. Were there any from here you wanted to go over next?
Yeah, let's talk a bit about some of the just the general skills. So one of the questions we had was, what are the most important skills to succeed at a job overseas? From your experience, what would you say?
Yeah. Well, I guess if you're looking for a job, a general job overseas versus a teaching job, I guess some of the skills would be different depending on that. But I think generally speaking, if you are looking to work internationally, one of the main things you really want to portray in your CV or in your interview is just that you have the ability to adapt quite easily to your new country. So giving examples of how you've adapted in the past to a new, it doesn't necessarily have to be a new country, but just a new environment or a new job. So I think adaptability and flexibility are 2 things that potential employers really look for, and we look for that at EF as well.
I think in the past 18 months, I think we've all probably got our own individual good examples of that as well.
Yeah, definitely. And also just a note on that, like, don't just write those 2 words on your CV, but really explain how you did it, how you adapted, how you were flexible to certain situations.
Yeah. For me as a recruiter, when I see a CV and there is a short explanation of a part of somebody's job role that shows flexibility or another key skill, that's when I'm interested as a recruiter. I'm thinking this person could be a really good asset. Another skill, I mean, besides specific skills for the job that you would be going to do, but another one I would say is just having really strong communication skills, communicating effectively at all times.
Right.
Just because, firstly, the role we're talking about today is obviously as an English teacher, working with learners for whom English is not their first language. So to communicate clearly, effectively is of paramount importance. But there's also like the personal side. We touched upon this earlier, but the vast majority of the people in this chat will have a similar level of Mandarin to myself, which is relatively low, let's say, in my case, definitely. And you just need to be able to effectively communicate despite potential language barriers. That's a key one. Any other skills that you would say?
I guess this one isn't so much a skill, but I would say if you are going to apply for an international job or a teaching job with EF, another thing you really want to show is that you are motivated to teach abroad or to move abroad. So we also look for just people that are generally like excited about the opportunity. And I'd assume that any international position, they'd probably be looking for the same thing.
Yeah.
So you really want to bring that motivation to your interview or to your CV or in whichever way that you apply.
Yeah, really good point. Sort of on that note, what was it that first, I know you spoke about how and why you ended up abroad, but what was the real motivation within yourself to move from the US and experience life on another continent?
Yeah, I think I just got to that point where I was just ready, ready to travel and just do something completely different. I think that's what it was. I really just wanted like a completely new experience. And I really felt like it was the right time to do that.
Mm.
So yeah, I think I had that like innate motivation to just want to get out, basically. And yeah, I see that need for like adventure and just wanting to explore. I see that a lot in candidates that I interview as well. So yeah, I think it was that. And then at the same time, it was also because my background was in teaching. So I also wanted to kind of start my career as well. But here I am not teaching. So you never know what path you'll go down.
Yeah, it's quite interesting the different career paths you end up on. Like,
yeah,
if you'd said to me like 8 years ago, this is the path you would have taken, I probably wouldn't have believed you.
Yeah.
It's been completely different to perhaps what I was anticipating in the best possible way.
Yeah, that's kind of a good segue to like the next thing we can talk about. Like, so we're both recruiters now, but neither of us intended to be recruiters, right?
No.
So yeah, like how have you found the transition to this job? I guess.
Yeah, that's a good point, because one thing I had always thought when I was teaching a few years back, before I joined the EF, I was thinking, where do I go in teaching English as a foreign language? Where does this career path lead to?
Yeah.
And I had done a couple of different roles within the schools I was working with before, kind of admin roles. I was a director of studies at one point. But I was asked to do a bit of recruitment work for the company I was working for, on a relatively sort of short-term casual basis, but realized for me it was the best way to sort of take a different step out of the classroom. I felt I'd done quite a few years of that, do something a bit different, but also to just share, allow somebody else who may not have lived abroad, may not have taught before, allow them to have this kind of, I guess the word's adventure that I did.
Yeah.
So I did that, and then with English First, obviously as a full-time international teacher recruiter, obviously the thing I found difficult was actually that I kind of missed teaching a bit. That's the only side of it. I worked with people of all ages, but I particularly missed working with having my kids' classes and having a load of fun in that. What's sort of, I guess, mitigates that now is that I speak to, on a daily basis, people who are so excited, so motivated to go and start their adventures, and I can help with that. Yeah. I actually found the adaptation, that phase, relatively smooth, but there are obviously a lot of different skills that you would, compared to the classroom, this particular role is quite different.
Right.
Yeah. What about yourself?
Really like exactly the same thing, kind of. I never thought I would be in recruitment, but then when I started looking for a job, so basically my career path was teaching, and then I did a bit of like, I knew I wanted to stay in education, but I wanted to veer away from teaching a bit. So I found a few other positions in like, I guess they were like education coordinator jobs. And then from that, I learned more like of kind of like the admin-y part of working those types of jobs. So then anyway, once I got to the UK, I was looking for a permanent job. And just like you said, I knew I wanted to do something still with travel, education, international education. And so like, I just literally Googled those things, and education first as a main company came up. So that's when I looked on their website and found the recruitment position. And I read through like the job specs, and I thought, well, I've never recruited before, but I do have international experience, and I have that, just all of my experience from being abroad. So I thought, well, yeah, I think I can go for this job.
Yeah.
So yeah, here I am.
And I mean, we get to talk about life abroad, teaching English all day, every day, which for me, it's yes, something I find really interesting. I really enjoy it.
Yeah. Someone on Instagram asked a good question. They said, what's the career progression options with EF? Which is a really great question. Because if you do come and teach English with EF, you have other options as well. If you want to stay with the company, there's a lot of room for job progression. For example, like what we just said, we're in recruitment. So if you start with teaching with EF, you could always then, if you wanted to stay, move into a different role like recruitment, or if your background is even in like marketing, you could move into that part of the company. So there's a lot of different options with EF. Yeah,
I mean, one part of what I think makes EF and companies like EF in general quite interesting is that the people in every different role are people who bring different things to the table, but the majority of kind of experience of life abroad or teaching English. You know, even the rest of our recruitment team, the majority of them are actually former EF teachers, people who began in the classroom.
Yeah.
But then there's also sort of a route within a school working abroad. So you know, if you start teaching and you think, you know, this is the thing for me, you could potentially take a career progression route similar to what mine was previously. So begin as a classroom teacher, gain a bit of experience, get a bit of extra professional development, become a senior teacher perhaps, which then would lead to opportunities for further qualifications, perhaps becoming a director of studies. So there's a definite route for those who are, you know, perhaps looking at this as a several years kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. If you're looking to stay in China, there's definitely a route for that. But even if you want to return to, you know, wherever it is you're from, there usually is some type of EF, maybe not English first, but education first roles that you could potentially look into as well. So yeah, lots of room for growth.
Yeah, definitely.
Great. Let's see. Someone asked, I think we can address this one just because it's very relevant. How is the protocol with the pandemic in China? So great question. I think a lot of people are concerned with that. Well, I guess as far as getting a visa to get to China is where we would start. So you still can get a working visa to get into China despite everything with COVID. There's just a few extra steps that you have to take. And unfortunately, it also kind of depends where you're coming from because certain consulates or embassies are closed at the moment. So that's a part that's a bit out of our control, but yeah, we're still able, at least from some parts of the world, able to still fully process a working Z visa.
Yeah, I kind of mentioned it earlier that the visa process is a bit longer than it usually would be at the moment. That's the case for everybody around the world, wherever you're based, much like many other parts of life.
Yeah, it's kind of become the norm.
Yeah, but then over in China, it's a bit of a different story. There is, of course, if you arrive in China, the need to have COVID tests. There's the need to go into a quarantine when you arrive. But besides that, life is mainly normal.
Yeah, I mean, we're not currently in China, but from all of our colleagues that are there, everything seems completely back to normal in China for day-to-day life. I think the most noticeable thing is just mask wearing, but that's pretty common everywhere now. But yeah, most things are back to face-to-face. Cool.
I just read half a question on the on the Instagram.
I think we can.
Can we scroll up?
Keep going.
Okay. So yeah, to clarify, these are opportunities in we're discussing in mainland China. Okay. And yeah, there was also discussion of I can't see the question right now, but about career development in different countries. So teaching in different countries. So at this moment for the English First program, we're only recruiting for China. Hopefully at some point there'll be a bit recruitment in other countries because we've got the same program in Indonesia as well, for example.
Right.
But for just for the moment, that's not happening.
Yeah, but the nice thing with China though is that there's so many possible cities that you could go to. So I think before you really look into it, a lot of people think, oh, just China, maybe I can just go to Shanghai or one place. But there are quite a few different cities that could give you what you're looking for. Yeah, like the southern cities are great if you want more like subtropical, warm year abroad versus other cities.
Yeah, those ones seem to be quite popular with the UK candidates at the moment with the weather we're having here.
Yes, yeah, most people want a nice, warm, sunny place to be.
Okay. Can we scroll down there? See if there's anything.
Yeah. All right.
Okay, should we go for how about, where is it? So this one, do you have any tips for networking while working in an international company? It's quite an interesting one.
Yeah. I guess what you'll find when you do work abroad, whether it's with EF in China or just any international company, you'll be meeting a lot of new people like right away. So like I mentioned earlier, you're kind of overwhelmed with new people and new faces and new friends. So I guess my tips would be just to make as many connections and friendships as you possibly can and keep in touch with people. So LinkedIn is probably like one of the main ways. So connect with people on LinkedIn or even through other social medias or just email, things like that, and just keep in touch with people so that when you do leave, if it's China, if you leave China, you can still continue those relationships with people. And then you never know like where those connections will end up.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, there's what there is in every international city where there are language training centers like EF, there's also a community of teachers. So, you know, as an example, having been out to Shanghai, I know that there is a very strong English first teaching community there, you know, over 30 schools that we have there. And there are opportunities for the teachers from, say, a school on one side of the city to meet the ones on the other because of social events and trainings and things like that. But just as a more broad thing, there are, I think for those that haven't experienced this before, pretty much every city in the world where people are learning languages, there's a real community of people in that field. I've met people from all walks of life, you know, all different positions, all different stories.
Yeah.
And that I've found is the best way to network, the best way to network personally and professionally.
Yeah.
For me.
Yeah, finding other like expat groups as well in whatever city you're in is a really great way to meet other people that are kind of in a similar situation to you, but also people that could help you moving forward with your career. So joining any type of like groups or clubs, or specifically if you're in China, you'll most likely have WeChat, so you can join some groups on WeChat of people that are have similar interests, or just like networking events, things like that. So yeah, take advantage of like those just like online events too.
For sure.
Great. Maybe let's answer this one. This is a good question. Number 10. What was the most difficult thing to overcome while working abroad?
Okay. All right. I'll start on this one. So I personally, I think the things I expected to find really difficult to overcome weren't the things that were difficult to overcome. So I was expecting things like with not the best level of the languages that I'm speaking in the countries, I was expecting the language barrier to be an issue. I was expecting my sort of, I was thinking I'm moving from my home country to another country, and I've got to make a group of friends. But those things actually came quite naturally. Personally, it was just sort of missing family, to be completely honest. That was the thing that was the most difficult to overcome, close to family. However, one of the things that sort of just making time for a quick call with them, a quick catch up, video call, that kind of thing. That for me was the only thing that I think I found really more difficult than the other parts.
Yeah. I asked that question, but now I don't actually know what my answer would be, because I think the things I was expecting to be difficult, like you said, weren't that difficult. And I actually found like, hopefully my family's not listening to this part, but I found like I didn't really miss home that much at all. Like everything was just so exciting and new that I didn't really feel homesick. I think I felt homesick a few years later. It started to kick in, but initially I didn't really feel too like sad or homesick. So I thought I would feel that, but I didn't really feel it too much.
I've heard that side of it like referred to as sort of like a curve of how you feel. So when you first get to a new country, it's like the honeymoon period.
Right.
You just love it. Everything's new. Everything's amazing. Everything's so much better than home.
Yeah.
After a little while, it becomes more familiar, and that's the part where you start to, for me, a couple of years into living abroad, I started to just miss, the odd thing from home, but it was always massively outweighed by, at least I've got this adventure coming up on the weekend, or love this class I'm teaching. It's so much fun. There was always something that outweighed it for me.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I mean, even like all of the new food options is like something that was so exciting that I didn't really miss much about home, because there was just something all the time that was new and exciting. I think like, although we mentioned that you really don't need to know the language at all to get by, which is true in China, I think the one thing for me that got difficult after a while as well was that I didn't know the language as I learned quite a bit, but I didn't know it enough that I could like fully conversate with locals. If I did meet some people that didn't speak any English, I really wish that I could speak a bit more to I guess connect on a bit more of a personal level. So that's one thing that I found a bit hard towards the end of my time abroad. But that's also the point where if I decided to stay longer, I would have definitely committed to learning the language a bit more than I did.
Yeah. And I think one thing that I'm very keen to to recommend to candidates is that they make the most of any way of learning the language that they have. So with EF, there are online classes available. There are face-to-face classes over in China. But sort of by yourself, just picking up a bit of the language, using apps to just get the basics, I can't recommend that highly enough. I think it just adds a little something to an experience abroad. You know, I know for a fact I'm never going to be fluent in Mandarin, but having studied a little bit by myself, really enjoyed it. I feel a bit more connected to China in a way.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. There's so many ways now. There's so many apps, like Matt said. And then EF offers free Mandarin lessons as well to all teachers. And you can even start those before you arrive into China. So yeah, it's a great thing to make use of. Yeah, also make friends with locals as well. Don't just stay in your expat friend group, because that can open up just a whole world of language and culture and things that you might not be able to just do on your own. So yeah, definitely be open to making some local friends, either from your school or community. Yeah, that's some good advice.
Great.
Great. Sorry, there's quite a few questions coming through. Let's see. This is a good question. Would EF help with an actual teaching qualification, if that's a possible route? Good question. So EF does have different courses you can take if you want to advance your career in ESL specifically. However, if you're referring to just like a teaching qualification from the UK or from the States, that's not something that we offer, but we do offer quite a few additional certifications in the ESL industry.
Yeah. So things like specific teaching English as a foreign language certificates could be a possibility after you've been with EF for a while. Things like the Cert Tefl, which would essentially, the Tefl course that we mentioned earlier, it builds upon that. And even there are even opportunities for some of the diplomas related to language training center management as well. These are, of course, you know, the initial stage is obviously getting that classroom experience, perhaps experiencing some different roles within the school, but there are definitely some options there for people who are really keen to have a bit of a, to progress their career. Yeah,
definitely. Progressing your career, progressing your salary, things like that come along with that. So that's great. So someone just wrote, "Hi everyone watching from South Africa, can't wait to arrive to China." We also cannot wait for all of our South African teachers to hopefully soon enough arrive into China as well. Yeah, we haven't forgot about all of you. So yeah, hopefully that can happen soon enough. Great. Let's see. Yeah, we'll move on to some of these.
I think we touched on this a little bit before, but we could talk in a bit more detail. What are the key points to include in my CV for a job overseas?
Yeah, good question. Well, one thing that Matt and I talk about quite a bit when we do these webinars on this sort of topic is including soft skills and hard skills. So the difference between those are just that soft skills are basically traits, like positive traits about you that you can show on your CV. So kind of like we mentioned earlier, like your ability to be flexible or adaptable to a new environment or to a stressful situation or things like that. And then hard skills are things that are more measurable. So if you have previous teaching experience and you know how to lesson plan, that's like a hard skill. Or if you have like computer programming skills, that's a hard skill. So we usually advise to include both of those types of skills on your CV.
Yeah, definitely. To develop a point we made earlier about how you include these on the CV. So with the soft skills, with a brief example within the role. You know, as an example, you could mention on your CV, you know, from this previous job where I was tutoring, so not exactly the same as teaching English as a foreign language. I was tutoring, I had some experience of lesson planning. I had to adapt this to different learners, different age groups and things like that. Within one brief sentence, you can show a soft skill of adaptability and a hard skill of lesson planning. So that's the kind of thing that definitely in the ESL world we're looking at a lot.
Yeah. So if you are applying and you don't have previous teaching experience, that's completely fine. But yeah, show anything you've done related to, even if it's not related to teaching, but related to training. Like, have you ever had to train people in your current job? Have you ever, like Matt said, done any tutoring or coaching? All of those things work really well with teaching, so you can utilize some of the requirements for teaching and show how you met those in other avenues. So that's a good one. Something else I just thought of, but it flashed my head.
Yeah, I'd just say those the skills we mentioned earlier that are useful to really ensure that you're successful working overseas. Those are the things you need to include in your CV. If you possess those things, of course. So, you know, being a team player, you're going to be going into an international team, you know, that kind of diverse environment. You need to show that you can fit in and be a valuable member of that team. Showing effective communication, so things like spell checking the CV and anything like that. The flexibility I mentioned, problem solving and resourcefulness is a big thing. And yeah, possibly not on the CV, but things like accepting feedback. You know, this is a job that, as we've tried to make very clear, this is a job that has development opportunities, but those are best based on how you take your training, how you accept the feedback you're given, how you develop with the support of the company. Yeah,
and then going a step further from that, if you do take a position teaching in China with EF, keep track of all of the skills that you learn while you're teaching over that year or 2 years. Kind of continually update your CV during that time, because you might learn some new skills like lesson planning or anything, creating a project for your students to follow. Any of those skills you can put into your CV, and then when you go to apply for your next job, whether it's teaching or not teaching, you can show how you used or how you developed over the past year or 2 years in your current job. So you really want to show like how you developed as a teacher, as a person, and all of the new skills that you obtained while teaching English abroad. And I remembered what I was going to say.
Okay.
If you are applying for an overseas job, whatever job it is, definitely look at the job specs. So if you're looking at a job advert, like online, it will say like the necessary skills that they're looking for. So read through those and then apply them to your CV. So one like big tip that I have for most people is don't just make one general CV and send it to many different jobs. You really have to tailor your CV to the job you're applying for. And a great way to do that, like I said, look at the job advert, take out some of those key points that they're looking for, and then make your CV tailored to those specific job like key points that they're looking for.
Yeah, there's definitely, to give the example of teaching, there's perhaps less technical information required on a CV and more, you know, you need to show who you are as a person. You know, you need to show a bit of what you would be like in the classroom as well. So that kind of adaptation of a CV is vital.
Yeah. Great. Let's see, we probably have time for one or two more questions.
A quick one here.
Yeah.
So is it necessary to have work experience to find a job abroad?
Great question. So do you want to take that one?
I'll take that one, yeah. So it's not necessary to have work experience to find a job abroad. Some regions, some locations may have specific rules in place, but as a general rule, it's not. What is necessary with most jobs, especially where a working visa is required, you need to have a bachelor's degree. So many of the skills that you would obtain within your bachelor's degree, if you have no particular work experience, those skills gained from the degree would kind of replace those on your CV, on your application, when you're speaking to someone like us, a recruiter. So it's not necessary, but obviously you have to show that you have the skills, or that you can pick up the skills, that you're trainable, basically.
Yeah, trainable. It's a good word. Also for that, you don't necessarily need work experience, but if you are applying for a job overseas or internationally, I mean, this sounds kind of obvious, but make it known that you are able and willing to pick up and move abroad, like that. You're able to do that. You want to do that for at least a full year, because most international jobs are looking for at least a year commitment. So showing that you're pretty much quite flexible when it comes to moving. Maybe open to location if you are, things like that. So that's one thing people really, recruiters look for if they're trying to recruit for an international position.
Absolutely. Okay.
Great. All right, so we'll pick one more to end off with. Let's see. Actually, I saw someone asked like a question about what was our favorite place that we traveled to while being abroad? Oh, here. So what was the most exciting place you have visited during your time abroad while working for EF?
Yeah.
So, so for myself, like we mentioned earlier, while I was teaching abroad, I wasn't teaching with EF specifically. So I guess the most exciting place, so many actually. While I was working abroad in general, a few like places that really stick out in my mind of places I visited. Actually, Shanghai. I visited Shanghai years ago when I first moved abroad, but also more recently with EF with this job, and I really did love that city. I thought it was it's just massive. It's like this massive international city. Everything you could possibly want is in these big cities in China. So Shanghai was probably a highlight of mine. And then just another country that I visited that I really loved was Vietnam. I spent quite a bit of time there. Really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I think one of our previous Q&As was on traveling, wasn't it? Mm-hmm. And you know, that really highlighted the different countries you could visit. But personally, in my experience with EF, I hate to copy and paste Christina's answer, but after many years working in Europe and loving it in Europe, the opportunity to go to China, to work in Shanghai for a bit, for me, that was incredible. That was like something I never actually thought I would do. You know, I thought I would be working in Europe and potentially come back to the UK at some point, but I had that amazing opportunity to go to somewhere that is so incredibly different to European culture in general, to Europe.
Yeah.
So for me,
where's one city in China you want to go to?
Okay, that's a good question. I really want to go to Harbin, just to go somewhere that's completely different as well. Cold city, north, you know, somewhere a bit different. Yeah. What about yourself?
Probably like Southwest China. Some of our colleagues we work with here.
As far away from where I said as possible.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, some of our colleagues here worked in like Chengdu and Chongqing, and yeah, I think I'd really like it there.
Okay.
I also really like spicy food, so that's yeah, that's where it's at.
Very nice. Okay.
Yeah, great. Well, I think we'll kind of wrap it up here. We've got to most questions, and yeah, if you are interested in teaching abroad in China, definitely first thing to do is just check out our website, which if you're on Instagram or YouTube, you probably have access to that somewhere. So definitely check out our website. All of the instructions on how to apply are there. And also if you just want to talk to a recruiter, you can apply and a recruiter will get in touch with you.
Yeah, and I recommend that because I know we haven't been able to answer every question today. But if you were to apply, we could organize a chat with myself, Christina, or one of our colleagues to answer everything.
Yeah, definitely. We're here to answer all of your questions as the recruitment team. So yeah, definitely apply. Great. All right. I guess I'll just end it here. Yeah, maybe we'll see you all again in the future.
Bye, everyone. Thanks for coming.
All right. And Instagram, I don't actually know how to end you. And now, okay. Yes. And you will no longer be live. And